One of my favorite knives, you know, for the heavy woods type duty is the Bark River Bravo 1.5. This is in A2, and as you can see in my video, it will throw a spark with a rock. I got the Coca-Cola scales, rampless. Great knife, great knife. Ergonomics are really nice in a multitude of grips. This knife will feather stick. This knife will process large game. I've done it. You know, quartering large game, cutting out back straps, packing the meat out. This knife will make your shelters. It does very, very well. It is 0.217 inches thick, or which roughly translates to like 5.5 millimeters. So it's approaching a 1/4 inch thickness, and you can see it sort of holds that thickness very, very close to the tip. So it's an extremely durable knife. When I did receive this knife, the grind for the saber portion here was a little off, and you probably can't see it. And as always with any type of knife review, I do a tabletop after a field review. So there'll be a part 2 to this, and maybe you'll be able to see it then. But one shoulder here is lower than the other. Whatever. I knew I was going to use this knife, and it was a little bit more of an aesthetic thing, because really everything else is pretty much spot on. It's a breeze to sharpen on stones. These knives are pretty much flat ground in a sense, and then sort of convexed on a belt sander. So I mean, it's near flat grind. So I mean, it's not really, you know, this rolling that people talk about for sharpening. The movements are not large, and like I said, it's nearly a flat grind there. It's great. This was my second Bark River knife. My first one was an Aurora. And that was really my introduction into convex grinds. And they are my favorite grind, probably. If I could pick one to have on a belt knife like this, it would probably be the convex grind. So the tip is pointy enough. It's not like a buck 119 or anything like that. But it is definitely pointy enough. You'll be able to puncture hide with this, and you know, do whatever you need to do, bore holes, and it's stout enough, which is a great thing. The sheath, durable leather sheath. I have treated mine as I do with all my leather, so it's worn quite nicely. This here never quite lined up for mine, so the strap always sort of seems to get in the way, especially when resheathing. Sometimes it'll get hung up there. Not a big deal, but it does retain well. And I have used this knife in the Dundee rig. Okay, tied this up over the shoulder and put the belt through this, and it works great. There is good friction there to hold the knife. So moving on here, let's see. I mean, you know, some of the things you would do around camp, right? Might be like well, we'll just say might be a pot hanger. Okay, so we'll just whip up something real quick. Like I said, this knife has good power. You know, all the weight where you need it. It's almost like a miniature Ontario SP51 in a sense. Is sort of how it behaves. Now this, I'm not actually going to make a full-on pot hanger, but we'll sort of go through the motions of it. And you'll see that this knife has plenty of power to do the biggest tasks, and a good cutting geometry to do the fine tasks. And it'll hold up, like I said. This thing will hold up to anything you're really going to really going to throw at it. This would obviously be quite a large pot hanger, but for demonstration purposes, I think it's going to work out just fine. I mean, that grind cuts nice, bites in real nice. I find that for the most part, really, it it does pretty much, you know, hey, I like it better than the thick Scandi grinds that a lot of these manufacturers are coming out with, that I think is a disservice to the grind, because once again, you know, geometry determines how the thing's going to cut, and those thick Scandi grinds, I guess when we're going to get that thick, I just assume switch the grind altogether. But I like the thinnest of the Moras, like the Mora Craft line. That's about, you know, the Mora Classic even. I feel that is about as thick as I typically want a Scandi grind to get. And these convex grinds, there's no problem with feather sticking with these. At least none that I have found. And I went with the with the 1.5 just because I tend to like a bit more knife. I don't know. I'd hate to say than maybe is necessary. But I like knives usually between about 5.5 and 6 inches. If I'm looking for something that's like, you know, going to be a heavy-duty woods blade. You know, last thing I want to do out there in the woods is be messing around with a tool that's too small for the job. I'm not a minimalist type of a person when it comes to, you know, bringing my gear. I like a lot of the traditional type of bushcraft that I know a lot of you like. And you know, usually when you're rolling with that stuff, you need some tools. And this knife, you know, it accompanies a half axe nicely. And it's a good standalone, you know, heavy tool. If you have a if you have a Laplander and a knife like this, perfect. I've done you know, winter overnighters with just this and a Sven saw, and was able to, you know, of course, do all the kindling that was necessary, and any other heavy-duty tasks. I've built raised beds with this knife for you know, not for planting flowers, but for you know, for sleeping. And as you can see, it makes short work of cutting through stuff using the batoning method or the chopping method. That little bit of you know, beak there, if you will. You can get some good momentum with this knife, because there is some steel swinging around there. It comes in at less than a pound, I believe. I want to say maybe like 11 ounces. The tang is skeletonized, so it gives a real nice balance to the knife. You know, I own a Bravo 1, but it is the Rustic Bravo by Lon Humphrey. So I don't know what the Bark Rivers version of that knife is, but from what Bark Rivers states, that by extending the blade from, I believe, you know, maybe another inch or an inch and a quarter, whatever, from the Bravo 1 to the Bravo 1.5, or inch and a half, I'm not quite sure, but by extending that blade length and keeping that stock, it switched the balance from neutral to a little more front heavy, which is great for these small chops. Because if you can get away with a little bit of chopping, man, it'll make your life easier out there. You know, let's just face it. You know, I pretty much prepared this, you know, pot hanger with a few chops, and a couple smacks off of a baton. And you know, so there you go. As you can see, no issues performing a myriad of tasks. There's one gentleman I've seen do a netting needle with his Bravo 1.5, and you know, like I'm saying, you're not going to have an issue, you know, doing that with this knife, because the thickness of it, combined with the beautiful edge geometry, not just the edge geometry, I guess the geometry completely, makes for a great tool. As I said, from the you know, small chores to the large chores, a knife like this crosses over quite well. And this knife has always been one of my favorites. It's been used a lot, and as I said before, I won't put anything out in front of you that I haven't tested for at least a year. And you know, why would you want to hear my you know, gibberish on, you know, something I just bought, or something that I tested on one outing? You know, this here I've had for quite a while. I want to say maybe 7 years or close to. And so the chest lever grip like that is excellent. This little sharpening notch here, you know, I mean, it makes it very nice to sharpen. You sharpen the whole blade, and you can really get right up on that. And I'm just trying to bang out a little notch here, in case you were doing like some shelter making, you know, shelter making without, you know, cordage. Powerful knife, and made in Michigan. Just a piece of little scrap of maple. I don't know how it's going to work for you, but I guess I could just do this while I'm talking to you and showing you the knife. A2. I have a lot of you know, good things to say about it. At least Bark River's heat treat of it. More importantly, Bark River could probably take a bad, I shouldn't say bad, a lesser quality steel, and just by putting their geometry on it, it's going to be a great knife. As we said, you know, geometry determines the functionality, and the geometry of this here. Now, because, you know, a lot of knives in this class, you know, and I'll just say maybe like the BK2 and even the SE6, which I have a SE6 HM that I got a year ago that I'm in the midst of testing, and that I obviously am not going to bring to you with a review for probably another year or so. That has a wider blade, and wider blades are harder to control. You know, you got to control it more. They want to wobble on you. This really isn't a wide blade, meaning, you know, this way here, from here to here. And so you get great control. That cutting edge is right there, where it would be on one of your wood lures, or you know, a knife like that. So it gives great control. As you can see, I mean, hey, I got a camp robber. As I said, we'll look at this knife a little bit more, and I'll give you some comparisons to some other knives in its class, so you can sort of see how it stacks up size-wise, you know, in the dimensions, and then we can also get a closer look with it too. Check out my Bark River A2 and Flint video, and you'll see I get char cloth lit with this knife. So, like I always say, try things out for yourself. Don't believe people who don't use their knives and regurgitate information off a website or a forum. Do it yourself. Okay, so obviously quick work of a feather stick. And if I had a nice long piece of wood, I'd get those big ribbons just like you'd see someone doing with, you know, a nice Mora knife or something like that. And the power of these knives, just a push cut like that. No issues. No issues. Good knife. Very, very good knife. So, if you're curious on a knife like this and you think it'd fit into your system, I would recommend it. I've had no issues with the scales, no issues with the steel. It gets insanely sharp. If I take this to my highest grit whetstone and then take it to my strop with the green compound, this knife is just scary. I mean, it'll shave the hair on your arm and the hair is just jumping off. Okay, you could neuter a gnat with this. All right. So once again, thank you very much, and check out part 2 if you're interested, and we'll discuss more of the Bravo 1.5 by Bark River.